question because the really with drop off and pick up, it's going to look a little different at every building. And starting this week, our principals are going to establish a team of teachers at each building and kind of go through the process of how the plan will look in their building, and that communication will go out to the parents from the building principal. So it's going to, I just want to be honest, it's going to look a little bit different in every building from between the buildings, but also different than it did in previous years.
All right. Next one, how quickly can we expect to receive the information from the health department that was shared with you today? Having children in both BCL and Pine River, one of the major concerns is how classes at one school might be impacted by a positive test at another.
So is that question in reference to when there might be a case and how quickly they would receive the information?
That's from Rob Hernandez. I don't know, Rob, if you're still on.
That's kind of how I took the question. So, you know, obviously, again, that's a guidance from the health department. If it's suspected a case, maybe somebody had symptoms but was tested and didn't have a positive test at that point, or they were waiting to see if it was a positive test, there may be guidance from the health department to say that we have to send out communication right away, or they would wish for us, based on the symptoms, to wait, you know, until more evidence and more symptoms. I really want to refer to them. I suspect in most cases they would have us communicate that right away, but I don't know if they would in all cases.
Okay. Hopefully that's what they were looking for. This one, I love the name on this one. Mom, as cool as they come. Do you know what type of protocols you will have in place for bringing in substitute teachers?
So our substitute teachers will have to go through the same screening process that our students and our staff will have to each day. There'll obviously be the temperature check. When they come in, they'll walk through a temperature gate. For those of you who haven't seen one of those, maybe you've used one, but it looks very similar to like a metal detector. When you walk through, it actually reads your temperature. And so that'll be the first step in the screening process. And then as they check in for their day of subbing, there will be a list of questions that they will have to answer as part of the screening.
I actually, well, can I add to that question a little bit, Sean, just because I think,
sure.
Well, I actually had this question brought to me in regards to substitute teachers. Is there, obviously the teachers that we have are being trained on desk cleaning, that type of thing. Is that maybe that question had to do with some of that? Like, well, what the requirements in the classroom are and cleaning after students and that type of thing. Will they get that same type of training?
Yeah, so we'll have to work with our third party that provides our substitute teachers to have training. They're really good about making sure that they're up to date on training, but they won't know our specific protocols until we work with them on that. But that's our plan.
Okay, excellent. Sorry if I added that question. It wasn't meant to be, but I thought it was good.
Good question.
Lori asks, what technology supports will be offered to students who go virtual?
So the first question we would ask when they go virtual, and many already have been provided a Chromebook, do they have a device? So that's the first level of support. Mr. Valley, I know, is on here, so he and his team have worked really hard to make sure that anybody needing a Chromebook could request one and receive it in the spring. In addition, if there are still some folks out there who don't have one, they could request and be provided a Chromebook to be able to work in the online class. The other aspect is connectivity, and I would hope that if they're choosing the 100% online, that they do have connectivity at home. I mean, there is the ability from our parking lots to connect, but that would be pretty challenging if you're doing that every day. So I think that they would just really need to reach out and ask if they were having any issues with technology, just to reach out to myself or Mr. Valley or the building principal, and we could see if we can address any questions or concerns that they have.
very similar in that aspect to when we went in March then.
Yep.
Let's see. Well, will the virtual option have a due date for assignment daily or weekly? Also, how absence will be tracked? Do the kids need to be connected during specific hours of the day?
Yep. So the actual time that they're connected, the specific time they're connected in the day is flexible, but there is a expected timeline that they will follow. With pacing, just to keep them on track and make sure that they're getting their assignments submitted on time. I don't know what it looks like for every grade level, so it's a little hard to answer that from a K-12 perspective. Mr. Dishaw, did you have anything additional you would add?
No, I would just say that, even we are still responsible for the students, and we would be monitoring student progress. And if there were several days where a student wasn't logging on, we would have to follow our county's truancy protocol, same as we would if a student wasn't showing up to school. So the expectation would be that, at some point of most days, obviously kids are sick and, things happen. But, if we have several days where a student is not attending virtually, we would continue to monitor that, and we would follow the same protocol that we would if a student was in person.
Okay. From Anne Marie, how many students are in each building? That could be tough to tell at this point, probably.
Right. Is this in, would you say this is in reference to how many are going to online? I mean, our numbers vary in every building, so.
Anne Marie, are you out there still?
So I guess what I was thinking is more about how many students we are going to have per class in person. As I listened to several other board meetings since I teach in another district, we're considering that hybrid option, at least at the high school level, because we have many of our staff who don't want to be in a classroom with 25 to 30 or more kids. So I guess that's my concern, how you're going to have distancing of 3 feet between students in the classroom. And truly, that's even more concerning with our younger kids, with our elementary kids.
Right. Yep. So that's an excellent question. We really need to see where our numbers land on how many choose face-to-face. That will be our first indicator. In our plan, we did write language that, to mitigate any possible concerns that we may have with COVID, and the spread of COVID, we would reserve the right to alter our secondary plan, grades 6 through 12. I know you mentioned hybrid. There's a lot of different hybrid models out there to look at. Right. Some different type of scheduling that might help us to be able to reduce those numbers if we need to. Mm-hmm. So we're, again, there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know really what our enrollment, how many will enroll in Bullet Creek. That's our first question. The second question is how many will be face-to-face and how many will be online. And then once we actually have those numbers, that's why we did the August 9th date, so we could really look at those numbers and work on our scheduling. And then once we have those numbers, how do we divide our students up so that we can space them out the best way possible?
Right. Yeah. I just jumped into this board meeting from another board meeting, and I just, because that's what we're discussing is hybrid, and how we make that work. Yep. I just know, as both a parent and a teacher, being in a classroom with 25 kids is terrifying right now.
Yeah. We understand that.
Okay. Will the remote learning of BC teachers include video instruction for elementary students, or will it be just assignments posted in Google Classroom like in the spring?
So we'll be working with our teaching staff on what that actually looks like. Our principals have been going through some details on that, and we're going to start sharing that with start working with our teachers on that, what it will actually look like. There will be Could be recorded lessons, could be live lessons. There'll be contact daily with students, and you know, they'll have the Google platform set up, and work through the Google platform with students and provide assignments in the Google Classroom. So you know, it'll look a little bit different in every class, and some of that is based on teacher comfort, but there will be also expectations of what the contact that teachers make with students every day.
Okay. If the state goes back a phase, will the district deliver food and supports again like it did in the spring?
Yep. So we're as you may have seen in the roadmap to return, phases 1 through 3, the government does ask that all districts open back up their food delivery system, and so we would move back into that phase if we drop to level 3 or lower and begin delivering meals again.
Is there a plan to bring virtual instruction back to district teachers second semester? From Kate.
Virtual instruction to teachers back in second semester?
I don't, Katie, are you out there? I'm not sure if I understand correctly what she's asking there. Could be if they're virtual now, bringing it back to face.
The question, I guess, is are district teachers going to be, I mean, if this goes on past the first semester, will district teachers be given instruction to virtual classes, or is that something that's going to be third party through this entire school year, or is it just a?
Yeah. So thank you for clarifying that. I better understand now. We're gonna work with the third party this entire year, and then we'll have conversations with our teachers about what that might look like in coming years after this year.
Okay, and then same person, has bathroom occupancy been set, and is there a plan to make the hallways directional in each building?
Yep. So when our principals start meeting with their teams later this week, they'll be talking about flow of traffic in the hallways and what bathroom breaks might look like, and start to detail out all those plans. Again, it's going to look a little bit different in every building. It's just really comes down to the design of the building and how we're able to move students around in the building. But the principal is the best person to lead those discussions, and you know, that information will be discussed with teachers and then with students, and anything that needs to be shared with parents, I'm sure, will be shared out as well.
Excellent. Anne Marie, will you be providing face shields for staff?
So we've purchased so far quite a bit of equipment related to COVID. We did purchase 1,000 face shields. We did not purchase one for every individual, but our plan initially is to give a face shield to every teacher. We did purchase washable face masks. I'm sorry, face masks, the cloth washable. We purchased 3,000 of those. Every staff member will receive 2 of those, and each student will receive 1. And then we also purchased 100,000 disposable face masks. We have, I mentioned the temperature gates at each building. We've purchased 8 of those for our district to stage them at main entrances where students would be coming in. Some buildings have more than one main entrance, and so, not main entrance, but entrance at the beginning of the day. 250 boxes of vinyl gloves, 160 gallons of hand sanitizer, individual sanitizer dispensers for each classroom. We bought 3 of the fogging guns for our buses. Between our bus runs, we'll actually be fogging the buses to disinfect and then wipe those down. And then 2 of the backpack foggers that we will either use for that or within the buildings if we need to during the evening cleanings. Plexiglass, we've purchased a ton of plexiglass, and we have a crew making a lot of plexiglass dividers for secretaries, for our food service department, our itinerant staff, and then all shared tables. So that's our first wave, our first initiative to have plexiglass for those areas. And then, we're constantly trying to get supplies. That's the biggest thing right now with plexiglass really is, can you find it? And can you find it at a price that you can afford it? So we're really doing the best we can to accumulate as much supplies and protective equipment as we can at this point.
Excellent. From Kevin, how have teachers effectively teach considering the new challenges in their classrooms, as well as facing the possibility of going fully online? Will teachers receive additional resources to tackle these new challenges?
So we have, that's a really good question. So we have a training scheduled prior to the start of school to go through the Google platform and do some training with Google. And I think that's one of the biggest resources for teachers. Many had a chance to experience Google back in the spring and kind of get their feet wet with utilizing the live portion of that, as well as even recorded videos. And so we'd like to continue that training. There's some experience now and motivation that we all have to learn more about it. We're on obviously a Google Meet tonight. So I'm learning right along with the teachers. So any training I think there will be helpful, and that's our first initiative.
Excellent. From Mr. Brown, what is the plan for return to the classroom for infected teachers and students? And he apologized for being late to the meeting if it was covered already.
Was that infected?
For return to the classroom for infected teachers and students.
Okay, so if someone tested positive and there had to be a quarantine, the return. Again, that's really going to come down to the guidance from the health department. At how long has the individual been without symptoms, and what's been the quarantine time? And so in consultation with the health department, they'll help us make that determination.
Okay. From Abby, I'm choosing to start my kindergartner son as a virtual learner this fall. We were very excited about starting BC's nature program. Will Ingenuity have any nature-based modules? If not, is it possible to get lesson plans that I can use at home to make sure my son is getting a similar education to his peers?
Excellent question. I don't believe, and principals correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that Ingenuity will have a nature component. That's ours. That's what our teachers have worked hard to develop, and it's a wonderful program. And what a beautiful thing with when you're in this unfortunate circumstance with COVID, to actually have your curriculum based on outdoors and get outside and social distance on a stump circle, and the setup for nature is really conducive to really what we're being asked, is to be outdoors more. So this is a positive thing.
All right. From Aaron, what are guidelines for buses? I was told it's a requirement that students have a sibling to ride with. What about kids who attend separate schools within the district?
Right. Yeah. So when possible, if there's a sibling, we would, obviously assign a seat with family in the same seat. Each student will have an assigned seat, just in general, whether they have a family member to ride with or not. When students, we do ask that parents, I'll back up a little bit to start the day. We do ask parents that they have an element of screening in the morning, that they take temperatures, ask questions, how are you feeling today, those kind of questions, before we send children out to the bus. To board the bus, they will be required to wear a mask on the bus. All students will. And then we have hand sanitizer when they enter the bus that they'll be asked to put on. We'll actually have a dispenser right at the stairs. And so once on the bus, they'll move to their assigned seat. And then when weather permits, we, per recommendation, that we'll crack windows and allow some fresh air in. I am hearing that it's probably not wise to have windows all the way down. It's probably better just to have a little bit of airflow in there, but you don't want a large volume of air rushing through the bus. And so that's just guidance that we're receiving. So that's what we've been told. And then once students are dropped at the individual building, our buses, once they make their morning run specifically, they'll drop off the 612 students. They'll enter into the bus parking area where the buses will be disinfected, and then they'll head out to pick up the K5 run. And then once they get back from the K5 run, they'll disinfect again for the afternoon run, and then they'll disinfect between the afternoon runs. So quite a bit of process there, but the buses it's not a large space, and it's pretty hard to social distance appropriately on a bus, and so there's challenges there. I would encourage families, if part of the process, if they could drop off their children in the morning, I would encourage folks to do that. But I know that not everybody can, and that's a challenge. And so that's why we have busing, and we're going to do the very best we can.
Okay, looks like the last one as of right now for the in chat. Are you planning to use any universal student assessments to check in on how kids are doing emotionally? If so, what tools will be used and how often?
More for emotionally. Is that what you said? Yeah, I don't have the specific answer for that. I don't know if any of the other principals are on yet. We just started discussing that today, and we'll have more discussion tomorrow.
Okay.
Sean, I would just say that.
Okay.
I would just say, we obviously have, we're fortunate to have, some really excellent counselors in each building, who have, have been doing this kind of thing even prior to this. And I certainly know that they've been meeting and talking, and while I don't know the specific assessments, I'm sure if the person that asked the question contacted one of the counselors, they'd be happy to let her know, the specific protocols that they're using.
If I can actually break in for that. Hi, it's Jordan Boyce. We have a meeting with the counselors that we're having within the next couple of weeks, and we're going to work on how we're going to be working to accommodate the emotional and mental health of our student population. So that's something that we're going to be discussing in pretty good detail here within the next couple of weeks that we'll have a plan for before school starts.
Okay. Last question. Will all sports be going on at this time? We already had one exposure. I know Shepherd has canceled fall sports.
So there's lots of limitations right now. Any indoor sport really cannot begin. So really volleyball is the fall sport that's indoors, and they can condition outside, but they cannot begin practicing indoors per MHSAA and the governor's rule on limits of 10 indoors. So there's right now there's a 1-week delay in football. And I think that's the only other one that's affected for us. Cross country can begin conditioning on time because it's not a contact sport. So the delay for football is really delays when they receive their pads and when they cannot hold any scrimmages prior to the start of the year. Soccer is also I believe delayed. But I'm not 100% sure about that one. I know that they're still slated to begin, and they can condition at the regular start time. I think some decisions still need to be made by MHSA. I didn't hear that Shepherd was not having fall sports. I didn't hear of any district that so far has canceled fall sports. Now, if we move to Region 3, all sports are not Region 3. I'm sorry, Level 3. All sports are canceled or cannot take place during that time. So I anticipate we'll see probably another delay at least. It's really a conversation it's really guidance we receive from MHSAA, and how does that fit with what the protocols are that we are expected to follow within our buildings.
I was reading through the plan, Sean. I read the 100, obviously the 100 people. Let's say if we do continue and have a football game, let's say, and 100 people, does that 100 people include the football team?
That's my understanding, that it's your total number of people at that gathering. So if you have 2 football teams, generally you have about 20, schools our size have about 25 players on a team. And so there's 50 athletes, and then you have their parents. You've already exceeded, right? If 2 parents come with every child, so, or every athlete. So it's going to be a real challenge to even host an outdoor event with the 100 limit. And I think the 100 limit is probably right now with where COVID is. I'm not saying that's a bad decision. I think it's going to be challenging to host those kind of events. And people aren't completely going to understand that Friday night you cannot come to the varsity football game.
Right. It's a tough one.
It is.
Going to keep rolling here. When do you anticipate getting general info from the health department that can be shared with families?
Yep. Oh, to share with the families. I reached out in our response to the health department today. The guidance that they sent, I wanted to see if that's something we can start to share with the public. So we'll start to place some information up on our website as we're allowed to do that. Hopefully later this week.
Excellent. Will the kids will the kids be required to wear masks while they are outdoors for recess?
So that conversation or that question came up by one of the administrators today. I know that we were working through some aspects of our district plan and how we were going to have those conversations with our individual buildings. I believe, any principals, were you part of that conversation today? I believe that we determined that students did not need to wear masks while outside as long as we were able to appropriately social distance. I'll wait for a minute if anyone.
Sorry, that is kind of what we talked about. We needed to make sure that if they were outdoors, depending on how they were playing outdoors, if they were going to be able to social distance, then they wouldn't have to have a mask on.
Okay. And just to be clear, when we're talking about our pre-K through 5th grade students, that's the cohort of students that will be together in the classroom where they can remove their masks too. So, when they're outside, clearly we want them to, if they're playing some type of a game or something where they cannot social distance, we may have to consider masks, but really it should be, it's the same group of students that they've been with all day in the classroom where they were able to remove their masks.
All right. From Anne Marie, what about a student who has traveled or come from out of the country? I will be hosting an exchange student this year. Other countries has done a much better job than we have.
Excellent question. I'm actually surprised that students are able to travel, foreign exchange students from one country to here, or vice versa. So I'm surprised a lot of those tour agencies or those exchange companies are allowing that. But again, I think that the guidance we've received from Isabella County Health Department on that, it was actually to the Isabella County schools, but it was shared with me, was that they have to stay in quarantine a period of time when they enter into the country. And, if they show no signs and they enter into the country, it would be clear that they're not, they're not positively carrying the COVID virus. So, that's a good question. I don't have a really good answer for, but that was really the guidance that Isabella County Health Department sent to their school districts. I've yet to see what Midland County would say about that.
Okay. And Russell, to piggyback on the sports question, FLL robotics should begin at the start of school. Will extracurricular volunteers receive some guidance on how to proceed, or if we are able to?
Right. Yes, excellent question. Again, this really comes down to what's the limit of numbers indoors. Can we host some of those opportunities for students virtually? Probably not robotics, I would guess, because they're working on a physical project. But that's we're going to have to play that one by ear a little bit and just kind of see what we're able to do during the, you know, indoors. Or could some of that be done outdoors too? That's another question.
Oh, I hit my last question. Anything else out there from anyone vocally? Great questions.
Wonderful questions.
Great conversation. Anything from the board? I know the board's out there somewhere still. Any questions, comments from the board? All right. One last shot for public comment. All right. We will then go on to our action items, which is to approve the return to school plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Again, any from the school board perspective, any questions? Mr. Hale, anything from you?
Yeah, I was going to run through a few details, but maybe I've covered most of them in the questions. Those were wonderful questions. I'm really impressed with all that was asked, and maybe most everybody has, at least through my letters that I've sent and things that we've posted, have kind of had most of their questions answered. I could quickly go through just a little rundown of some details that might spark a few more questions, or would you prefer to not let me do that?
Like to do that?
What's that?
I said if you'd like to do that, that's fine.
Okay. Oops, I'm sorry.
I have a question when you're done, so go ahead and do that, and then I have a question too.
Okay. So, you know, really, just to give our community an idea, you know, we first received the roadmap on June 30th. From there, we scheduled, you know, we sent some letters to our community. We knew it was coming out on the 30th, so we had sent a letter out on June 24th, and then another communication on July 17th, one on July 24th, and one on July 31st. And we just wanted to make sure that we did keep everybody up to date. You know, we had some key planning meetings with a representative group of our teachers on July 14th and 16th. Some quite a bit of electronic communication back and forth, and then another meeting on July 29th, and you know, quite a bit of conversation around really what should go into the plan and what kind of things that we should look for, and a lot of ideas that I really hadn't thought of, our administrative team hadn't thought of, and the teachers gave us some really good insight. And then we obviously had surveyed our community back at the end of last school year as to what they would like to see for the coming year if we were able to open school or not. And those surveys went out around the 10th of June. We surveyed our community, our parents, and our staff. You know, in this process, just so that everybody knows, our guiding principles in our research really was the return to school roadmap, executive orders that we received from the governor, this latest update from the Midland County Health Department, and that's going to really help us to start to detail out our plans in each of the buildings. And then, you know, the principles that we're guided by is just, you know, providing students equitable access to education to the best of our ability. And just to get through this is a challenge for everybody, and it's going to be, we're going to have to work through it, and we're going to have to make changes and figure out how to do this the best way possible. Students and staff will obviously prioritize deep and meaningful relationships to create a safe learning environment for our kids. We talked a lot about what it might, you know, what it would look like in phases 1 through 3. A lot of our conversation centers around phase 4, really. And phase 4 and phase 5, for the most part, look the same in our plan. You know, just make sure we're going to do the best we can to maximize our spacing in the classroom, and space those desks as far apart as we can, as far as we're physically able. Remove out of the classroom unnecessary furniture, or something that we can live without for a period of time. so that we can get those desks as far apart as possible. And then obviously I mentioned earlier dividers where, you know, those are shared tables. And then we're going to really work with our students about, you know, in regard to hygiene on regular hand washing, using hand sanitizer. And then what I hear a lot from parents, and I heard in questions this last week, is, you know, the younger students have a hard time with personal space. They want to hug, they want to touch, and that's part of growing up. But we're just, you know, we're going to have to work hard to try to just remind them and just do the best we can. And you know, as far as our food service, this really wasn't, I don't think, a question that was asked tonight, but, you know, our pre-K through fifth grade students will be eating in the classroom with their cohort group. And so they won't be going to a cafeteria. Our middle school students, we're going to actually spread those tables out from our cafeteria into the corridor and into the care center, just to maximize spacing there. And then our high school, we added a third lunch. So that we have fewer students eating at one time, and we can space them out a little bit more as well. And then as far as movement, I think we talked about this a little bit, but just making sure that we work to address with our students proper movement down the hallway, so that you know, students stay on their own side of the hallway, and you know, just social distance as much as we can in the hallway, as much as possible. And you know, obviously on buses and at lunch as well. I already talked a little bit about the temperature gates as the first step in the screening process when students come in. I talked significantly about the transportation. I think I walked us through the entire process there of all the expectations. This week, I mentioned earlier that our building principals will be organizing meetings this week and next to discuss what the individual plan will look like in each building. And then I've talked already about the K-5 cohorting of students. Just as some, you know, kind of final thoughts, you know, as a reminder, at the onset of the school year, students will only be allowed to move between the options of online versus face-to-face at the semester. So I just wanted to remind our community of that. Grades will be issued and attendance will be taken. And I think those of you that were frustrated, I know even teachers with the engagement with students in the spring, that the majority of that centered around the inability for teachers to grade assignments. The governor clearly said that a student's grade cannot be reduced by the work that they do. And students caught on to that pretty quickly. And a lot of students did start out working pretty hard, but I think as they realized that, you know, my grade won't diminish at all if I don't do this assignment, I think it was easy to say, you know what, that's a lot of work. I'm not, my buddies aren't doing theirs and I'm not going to do mine or whatever. And I think what's important here now, and I think is going to help make this look so much different when our teachers are teaching remotely this coming semester, is the fact that we can issue grades and we can take attendance. And so it's, in my mind, it's going to look like the school day, and our teachers are going to do a phenomenal job engaging with those students every day. Extracurricular activities are available for all students. So I wanted, you know, I've had that question a lot this week. Could students participate in a sport or an extracurricular activity if they're online? And that the answer to that is yes. So that was a question that came up quite a bit. Masks, as outlined in the plan, will be required per the governor's order. And I wanted to be clear about that, that our plan says that, you know, our pre-K through fifth grade students are able to take their masks off in the classroom, and that's still allowable. But in the shared spaces, in the hallways, that type of thing, they do need to wear the mask. And our 6th through 12th grade students will be wearing the mask all day, with the exception of at lunch. And those, just to reiterate, those that are medically unable to wear a mask, we do require, and this was the governor's expectation, we do require a doctor's note for them to not wear a mask. We do reserve the right, and I know I mentioned this early, to edit or change the plan given the circumstances. Who knew that we would be in this situation now? We don't know what it's going to be like in 3 months. And so we may have to make some changes, but, you know, we're going to do the best we can to keep students safe. And I know I've said this in my letter, but we're only as able to control COVID in our school as well as we're able to control it in our community. So the great job that we do in our community will be reflected for sure in our buildings as well. So I just appreciate all the questions this last week. I think people did a great job of really trying to understand the plan, and evidence of how many are on tonight is really tells me how much you care about your kids in the district, and making sure that we've thought through the process, and we've put a lot of time and energy into planning with the teachers and with the administrative team, and gathering input and responding to questions. And so my hope is that that we just have a successful year, and we're able to get through this the best way possible.
Excellent. Sandy, you had a question?
Yes, actually, I had a question, and I know that the staff and Sean, you guys are doing a great job trying to keep up on all this. Teachers too, we appreciate all that you're doing. Things change every day, and I appreciate that with different questions that the community, teachers, parents that are there asking questions, and that's making everybody think a little differently. I think that's helped with the plan so far. One of the things I've heard tonight was that your administration team and teachers got together and you're continuing to work together for the plan in individual buildings. I know I'd asked the question earlier, like when will we have that plan prior to making the decision on August 9th? And I'm just wondering if you're getting closer to having a plan, so that as parents, we can look at the individual building plan to make our decision on August 9th. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you guys worked all day.
Yeah. Yep. That's an excellent question. And the answer to that is probably not. And I say that because that's a lot of pressure on our administrators to have that completed this week. They've really been diving into this and working hard, and to pull together a team when teachers are able to meet. I can't say that it's going to be this week and it's going to be done. Really, the overarching plan of the district is going to be their guidance, and they're really going to dive into those individual nuances of each building. So to say that it's going to be completed by next Sunday, which I think is the last day to sign up for online, is kind of a short turnaround for them. So, and one of the things you said is things are changing daily. I mean, we just received the guidance from the health department today, and I know that there's more guidance with MHSAA and what sports will look like, and it's just changing all the time.
And I do appreciate that. I know that your plan has changed based on what you've learned and what you've learned from staff and what you've learned from parents. So it really has everyone, like, they're tweaking as fast as they get the information. So I appreciate that. So on that note, is it in stone then that, because I understand that a good plan, a well thought out plan is best, is the August 9th date set in stone then? Can we move that date back for parents to have the best possible plan for their families? Just a thought.
Yeah, that's another great question, and I know you and I talked about this a little bit earlier today. The challenge with that is we need to start scheduling students in classes and identifying our numbers, and so the longer we wait, it starts to add significant amount of work that principals have to have all done and communicated out to parents at the very last minute. And parents are getting excited, especially those face-to-face, to find out what teacher is my child assigned to.
Right.
And so or what, high school students are asking what their schedule will be. And so they have to start making those plans. And the tighter we make it, the more pressure it puts on our principals to do so much at the very end.
Yeah.
So,
There just really isn't the best. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. I mean, we want it to all go back to normal is what we want. I get it.
But just let me reiterate that the individual building plans aren't going to stray from the district plan. The district plan is an outline, and the specifics of each individual building are going to be contained within that. So they're going to work from that district outline. So it's not going to be a totally different looking plan. It's just going to detail it more.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate all your work, everybody.
All right. Any other comments from the board? All right. We do need a motion.
So moved.
Support.
All right. It's moved by Francis, supported by Dana. The Board of Education approved the return to school plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. And the second agenda item on the agenda for tonight is what Sean had mentioned is the ad for tonight would be to obtain a loan from the Michigan School Loan Revolving Fund for the financial obligations until we get our state funding, basically. Correct, Sean?
Yep. And Mrs. Pierce, are you still on? Oh, there you are. Anything additional you wanted to add on to that?
Yes, I do want to make a clarification that this borrowing actually doesn't have anything to do with our general fund. It actually revolves all around our bond payments, our interest and principal payments on our bonds. We levy mills to collect those payments, and we levy seven mills every year. Sometimes we can't levy enough to be able to collect enough in tax revenue to make those principal payments and interest payments. And so we have the ability to borrow money from the state until we can collect enough to make our payments, plus the additional, as property tax values go up, we can collect more, and then we pay our principal and interest payments, plus we pay back the state the portion that we borrowed. So that's what this borrowing is actually for. We had the potential of having to do this in May, and we didn't. We were able to collect enough. However, we have a little over $2 million in between November and May coming up, November of 2000 and May of 2021. And we're going to be just about $100,000 short. So not very much at all. And I don't foresee us having to borrow very often from this before our property tax values start to go back upwards and we're able to collect enough money. So this is just for a short-term loan, and we shouldn't have to go back to the state very often.
Thank you for clarifying, because obviously I was confused on that as well. I was assuming this was the funding for the state funding. So.
And it is because it's happening about the same time as what we do for our state aid note. Yes, which is something that we do every year.
Right.
So this is something that's new to the district.
Yeah, because that dollar amount is way less than what we normally have to get on the other one. So.
Definitely, we borrowed $3.5 million for operating purposes. Where this is, I'm anticipating about $113,000 at most.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Uh-huh.
Any questions, comments from the board? All right, need a motion?
So move.
Support.
I apologize. Was that Jill?
Yes.
Yep.
Dairy, moved by Dairy, supported by Turberg. The Board of Education adopt a resolution to obtain a loan from the Michigan School Loan Revolving Fund for the purpose of meeting the financial obligations of the district's bond, principal, and interest payments. The resolution names the Director of Business Services as an authorized agent for the district of these purposes. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 6-0.
And before we adjourn, there are a couple comments out there in the questions. Sean, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump back to those. One is, are we going to post this meeting that we've streamed and recorded?
Mr. Valley, are you still on?
Yes, it will be on the district's website.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Next one is, what if we push the start date of school back until after Labor Day? It would give everyone more time for decisions and planning.
I don't have an answer. I don't know. We hadn't discussed pushing it back. We made the application to start pre-Labor Day because of the lateness of Labor Day, and obviously we made that decision before COVID, and our start date's aligned with the rest of the county. So I sure could entertain conversation with the rest of the county to see if that's of interest. It's the reason I would need to do that is we have a lot of shared programs.
Okay, and then the final are the administrators, including any support staff, to help with the individual building plans for the phases.
Support staff?
Correct.
Yeah, I can. So I'll talk with the administrators tomorrow. I don't know who they're reaching out to yet and able to have come in and work on those plans, but I can sure have a conversation with them about that.
Great, thank you. And that wraps up all of the comments. Really appreciate the questions and comments tonight. Thought it was starting off. I thought it was going to be awful quiet, but obviously we all learn, I think, from the questions. So it's important to know what's important to everyone. So I thought that was a great meeting.
Absolutely.
And if nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:22.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. See you, Mr. Pfeiffer.
I'm Mr. Pfeiffer.